Hello guys, so we're gonna study together because I'm obviously bored and there are some things that I've been studying lately. So I will share new ideas that I have. I will share, new concepts and some things that I did study, but I didn't necessarily find anyone who connected and related all those things and methods to biomechanics, okay, to the symmetry and under development. So we're gonna do that. Okay, so firstly, basically, I'm gonna explain things on this little model. Okay, so in case you're wondering, this is a human being. I'm gonna demonstrate things that I'm gonna talk about on this little drawing, but you can ignore this for now. Okay, so this video is, by the way, gonna be like a wider, like bigger picture of everything that I'm planning on filming in the future. We're gonna go in a lot of details in future study type of videos. What's important for us to understand now is how all those different parts of the body relate to each other. Not only parts of the body, but just different segments of the body. All the elements, how they actually influence body biomechanics, breathing, posture, underdevelopment, all those things. Okay, so I know that most of you probably, when you hear the word biomechanics, when you think about underdevelopment and the asymmetry, you most likely always think about bones and muscles, right? Because that's how we were taught. But I believe that's almost like a flawed concept because all those issues are a consequence of something that's much deeper and that's obviously not very well understood, I would say, because even if I study physiotherapy or even if I study PRI, although I feel like they definitely are more advanced in comparison to physiotherapy, in my opinion at least, I feel like there is literally not one field that's 100% successful in treating all those things. And even if there are clinics successful in treating all those things, still I can't call whatever they're doing like official field, because it's not. So yeah, I basically studied from absolutely everywhere I could, and I came up with a concept that involves nervous system a lot in this entire biomechanical story, right? And I know in PRI, for example, diaphragm is something they focus on a lot when they talk about body remodeling, which I agree with. Diaphragm is extremely powerful muscle that has a power to remodel the entire body. But when we talk about diaphragm as a root cause of every biomechanical issue, I find that untruthful. I find that that to be a flawed concept, because although it impacts the body biomechanics, you have to wonder why did the diaphragm in the first place why did it become asymmetrical. And when I hear about natural body asymmetry, although it is true, to just simply claim that entire body became messed up and asymmetrical because of that innate asymmetry, I found that to be ridiculous, almost to the point of almost similar to how orthodontists they claim how we have extra teeth that we can't handle biologically, therefore we have to have extractions. I just find those ideas to be ridiculous. Same with this, asymmetrical diaphragm. I do not believe that we are not perfectly made, because if we were not perfectly made, if the root cause of all the asymmetries or most of the asymmetries would be asymmetrical diaphragm we were born with, asymmetrical body we were born with, then we would have absolutely no one with perfect biomechanics and with perfect symmetry, almost perfect symmetry, which is not true. Okay, I am not trying to find a solution for absolutely 100% symmetrical body, but we obviously have people who struggle with asymmetries a lot, especially today. Almost everyone has some type of asymmetry that I would consider severe. And obviously, when everyone is struggling with something, then obviously medical field will stop taking all those cases seriously, right? So yeah, basically the entire concept from physiotherapy and PRI, I have to admit that I do not absolutely agree with, although almost most of the things that I'm going to talk about is where I actually learned from them. But something that's different that I was not able to find this anywhere else. Okay, this is something that I came up with myself. But maybe it does exist. Okay, but I do believe that nervous system, more specifically brain, has a lot to do with body biomechanics. And if we're gonna talk about initiator of all those issues, unless you had some injury or something, external that would affect the body biomechanics. But unless you had those things, I believe that the brain is the main initiator. Although this is also flawed, and I'm gonna talk about that a little bit later. But if you're gonna talk in the most simplest terms, I would like to include brain as extremely important component of biomechanics as well. So I believe that most of us probably we know how brain in general impacts body physiologically, right? It impacts a state or the mode in which body is going to be. So we have sympathetic and parasympathetic. Okay, so we always basically want to lean towards the parasympathetic, where the breathing, where heartbeat, everything is just very relaxed, and that's like optimal baseline for the body. However, when our brain experiences some type of trauma, stress, it doesn't necessarily have to be something traumatic that most people would consider to be traumatic. It can be literally whatever your brain was not able to process correctly or process at all. That impacts the body in a certain type of way. Okay, so when something is stressful for your brain, it's gonna be stressful for your body as well. Okay, because obviously you have one body that functions as a one unit. So brain in such a state, struggling to process something, or most likely and very often charged with negative emotions, that immediately switches your entire body into sympathetic state. Okay, so that means that your brain sends those type of signals that now impact your breathing pattern and also your heartbeat. Now, this is why I like to say that yes, PRI is extremely right when they put a lot of emphasis on the diaphragm and breathing in general, but they misrepresent the diaphragm when they claim that it's the main trigger, and they often do come very close to relating all those issues to brain. Specifically, when PRI, they often mention the role of music and different stimulus basically that impact certain brain centers, very relevant for what I'm going to talk about. However, they never address the brain itself, which is wild to me because they come so close to that, but then they just never address it properly. Instead, they address something physical, as if brain itself is not physical. Anyways, so basically, when your body switches to that sympathetic state, obviously, as I said, impacts heartbeat, impacts your breath as well. So now this is relevant for bones. We always in biomechanics want to think about movement and something physical such as bones, rotations, then just movement in general. But that movement doesn't happen immediately when your heartbeat and breathing pattern or breath are impacted or altered, negatively. However, it does happen if your brain is stuck in a loop and your body baseline becomes sympathetic state. So your heartbeat and breathing just change for most of the day, okay, for hours, let's say, in a day or whatever, basically, whenever your brain pulls out those negative memories, emotions, maybe you become triggered, not knowingly or even subconsciously, so you do not even notice anymore that your heartbeat or breath is off, because with time, obviously, you get used to those things, right? But something that's going to be even more subtle, are going to be altered or changed primary respiratory mechanism, which impacts or basically which represents the flow of cerebrospinal fluid. Now, cerebrospinal fluid is a fluid that basically travels between your bones, nourishes your bones, and goes in those places that we call sutures. So we can also imagine primary respiratory mechanism as your bones just breathing, okay? They all the time, they move slightly, they separate and they come together. And the main force behind those things, those moments, is cerebrospinal fluid flow. So when that flow is off, certain parts of your bones, they are being separated more, some other parts are being separated less. And that's, I would say, one of the first symmetrical moments that start to happen. Um, and that's something that contributes to the entire symmetry. Okay, obviously, this is not going to be enough to cause, maybe it would be enough to cause severe asymmetries. However, this is often not where body stops. This is just one minor step in the entire process of body remodeling and changing for the worse. So basically, what happens after that is, since now we have altered primary respiratory mechanism, and since primary respiratory mechanism is synchronized with breathing, okay, with diaphragm, it obviously impacts, and not only primary respiratory mechanism or the dynamic of it impacts the muscular tone of the diaphragm, but sympathetic state that the entire body is in at that moment also impacts a diaphragm in such a way. So what does that mean in more practical terms? It would basically mean that one side of the diaphragm, since we have two sides, or we can also separate it in more different parts, but let's just talk about two sides of the diaphragm at the moment. That means that one side is going to get tighter and the other side is going to get weaker. So obviously the tighter side is going to overtake. And when that happens, when your body has established weakened side of the diaphragm, that side is gonna stop, not entirely, it never stops doing this entirely, but it's gonna significantly reduce transmitting force through the fascial chains. Okay, I have some notes here about this entire process. And this is, again, just one of the steps, but it's incredibly important, in my opinion. The severity of this step, of this part of the process, is what determines the severity of the asymmetry as well. So yeah, in that sense, PRI is right, because obviously you can now tell how important diaphragm is in remodeling the entire body. But then again, to completely ignore the entire brain regions responsible for diaphragm reacting or responding in such a way, that's flawed. So yeah, when we basically have a diaphragm that's tight on one side, weak on the other side, so weak side is gonna struggle with transmitting force through the fascial lines. And what happens next, since fascia is basically loaded with a lot of mechanoceptors, interoceptors, proprioceptors, which basically means that communication and connection between brain and fascial lines throughout the body, because fascia is that web that is wrapped around muscles and bones. So when partially in some parts of the body that communication is reduced, that obviously makes the brain, makes it necessary for the brain to fix that, which basically means that some other parts of the body are going to have to take over, which then just, um, makes those local tightness and local tight fascial parts or even entire lines even more severe, right? And yeah, on the other hand, brain just simply loses, never completely, but it has severely, reduced connection to other parts of the fascial meridians. And that basically just, it's almost like your body at that point is stuck in a loop. This is a part of the process that impacts the diaphragm then even more negatively, because now one part of the entire diaphragm takes over. Another part of the diaphragm simply then struggles to create intra-abdominal pressure. So, which basically means that, let's say this is a weak part of the diaphragm, with, let's say, weak fascial chains, eventually that's gonna remodel this entire rib cage. Okay, so you're gonna have external rotation here, you're gonna have internal rotation, because again, body functions as well as one unit. And eventually that's gonna reflect on the body as well, with higher one shoulder, lower the other shoulder, you're gonna start having asymmetries. This asymmetry can't stay alone, it can't stay, localized. It will have to reflect on a pelvis as well. Fascial meridians are going to cause this, but even those meridians or chains or lines that were not impacted, they're going to have to readjust, remodel in order to keep the body stable in this position, asymmetrical. Maxilla is going to have to realign as well, the entire body. Okay, so these rotations do not happen just, like this. They basically bones rotate in all kinds of directions, around anteroposterior axis, in sagittal plane, in all types of ways, okay, for body to basically find a new perfect balance point. So where was I? Basically, yeah, when it comes to that intra-abdominal pressure, when it lacks, when it's reduced on one side, that means that we basically at that point we have no pneumatic pressure or no pneumatic baseline pretension. And that baseline pretension that I just mentioned, it's supposed to, it lags on one side. We're gonna assume this is the side on which it lags, okay? Now we don't have that tension that's supposed to stiffen the spine, and that's supposed to transmit the force through the fascial chain, through the fascial line. Uh, Now, when I already mentioned the importance of brain and fascia communication, it's loaded with so many receptors. That communication is crucial because it's what, in the most simplest terms, that's what actually remodels the entire body. Okay, that's what pretty much influences and determines what kind of shape of your rib cage, pelvis, in what kind of position your bones are going to be. Now that's off. Okay, that's a huge moment for the entire misalignment that's about to happen, that's already happening. So yeah, at this point your diaphragm struggles a lot. It basically struggles to ascend on one side, descend on the other side, so it will stay higher on one side. For example, this side, it will struggle to ascend on this side. And yeah, at that point your entire rib cage is remodeled, not only remodeled from a bone level, but also your physiology is now being remodeled because brain fascia communication is lacking. This side of your body is going to have reduced communication between brain and fascial lines, which basically means that your brain is not going to be able to sense the fascial line as good as it's going to have the communication on the other side. Actually, the communication between your brain and fascia on this overactive side is going to be greater than it would even be in normal circumstances, with normal equal um, fascial strength, let's say it like that. So at that point, your entire body, physiologically, biomechanically, neuromusculature, on like every possible way, it's holding you stuck. And that's why it's incredibly hard. And this is not my opinion. I can see that all the fields that we have at the moment in the 21st century, why do I not see huge improvements in people? Why do I see people coming out of their physiotherapy after 1 year and a lot of money spent? Why do I see those people coming out with almost no progress? That's a real question. Like, if we are so advanced with science, with medicine, although I do not blame science for this, okay, these conclusions, everything that I see in science, it's good enough. It's good enough for us to actually find relevant information and draw some not low IQ conclusions from it. Okay, I believe that we can find a solution to this. It will just never happen, and it's impossible for us to find a solution to biomechanical issues if we continue treating a body separately, because it's not. And biomechanical issues are the biggest, literally the biggest proof for that. I do not believe that diseases in general are localized issues that have nothing to do with the rest of the body. I simply do not believe in that. Like, you can find a proof that's the truth. Nothing in a body, biology in general, life itself does not work like that. Everything is connected. Okay, so to just simply claim that body, some parts of the body are not relevant for the issue in another part of the body, to me that's just crazy. It shows deep, and I have no idea where that disconnection and disagreement even comes from. Anyways, this is gonna be entirely different topic, okay? But yeah, we have to think about biomechanics like this, okay? We have to include the brain. I'm very glad that I obviously didn't really start this entire idea from scratch. I took absolutely everything from other people here. It's just that, for example, when it comes to brain part of the biomechanics, I'm not the only one proposing this idea. Okay, by the way, I want to really stress this out. But I didn't really find anyone who would tell you what to do in order to fix the biomechanical issues. Like, why would you sell a course on that? Why would you not, if you actually came up with something and you are actually getting, um, what's the word? You're getting some results with people. Why would you not share that? Anyways, I didn't, I believe that I was not the first one to include brain in this entire concept, but I was not able to find literature. I have a great book right here on fascia. I have literature. Okay, I found many things. I studied psychology for this as well. I found things, unfortunately, by myself. I had to find it by myself. I don't know why others didn't really like share or connect all those things for me so that I could just use it. But they didn't for some reason. So we're gonna do that together, okay? In the next episode, in the next study with me video, we're gonna talk about brain. Okay, we're gonna talk about brain um, in as initiator of this entire process. Okay, again, I wanna say brain is not initiator in literal sense. Okay, because it would literally not be able to change the entire body if body didn't respond. It's back and forth, and it's literally a loop. But yeah, I believe that it's hard to fix biomechanics because you do not include brain. Okay, you have to at least Include it. I don't believe that it's possible to fix body biomechanics by working only with the brain, but also it's obviously not possible by working only on your bones, muscles, and fascia. Um, so yeah, we will have to work on absolutely everything, and I believe that it is possible to fix all those issues. And if it is possible, then this is gonna be absolutely the best possible solution. Also, the very interesting thing, because in the next video, as I said, we're gonna talk about the brain. We're gonna talk about specific parts of the brain um, that control all the biomechanical aspects. Extremely interesting how much in psychology we actually discovered about all those things, and even more interesting why we absolutely don't use all those principles. It's actually crazy to me, okay? I'm going to include in each part of this study with me series, I'm going to include very practical exercises and steps, and just day-to-day things that you should do in order to start fixing biomechanics. And next video is going to be about brain. It's going to be about all the brain regions, about specific exercises and mechanisms that we already have. There are some things that we do, for example, while we are asleep. A body uses certain mechanisms as coping mechanisms, to process the information and everything that happened the day before. So in psychology, they figured out that the entire concept can pretty much be used to heal some mental health issues, some trauma, something that's simply not processed entirely in the brain, and therefore it can cause, physiological issues. But as I said, physiology obviously impacts the biomechanics as well. So we're going to use all those, not all, but those relevant mechanisms that they discovered in psychology. Okay, so stay tuned for that. That's gonna be extremely interesting video, like about brain, and we're gonna also relate that to body biomechanics. It's gonna include some type of experimental methods as well, although I'm gonna take the main concept, like 99% of it is actually gonna be like legit, research stuff, and then we're gonna just slightly, change it to fit the biomechanics as well. And then after brain video, we're gonna talk about diaphragm and just breathing and some methods, exercises and stuff like that for fixing, remodeling the rib cage. Then we're gonna also talk about fascia. There's gonna be a great video. There's a lot of information on fascia. Actually, I just needed to study that. We have all the exercises, we have all the stretches, we have a lot of like tips and information on how to approach those meridians. Okay, so it's not gonna be hard at all. So yeah, I'm yapping so much now, but basically that's everything for this video, and I'm gonna see you in the next one.